Hi, fellow tea lovers. Settle in, because we've got a story. I'm Nell.
And I'm Rose, and today we're bringing you the tea.
Across Eric.
Well, welcome back. 2 weeks feels like absolute ever.
It does. It feels like forever since we recorded. Those were some busy days, though.
Yeah, it's nice to have a day off.
It is. Not that I'm off today, but
Well,
it's after 5 and work is ended.
it's nice to have a chunket
Yeah.
off.
Well, I just had the weekend off. It's fair.
Yeah.
It was a good weekend. I'm repainting all of the primary color walls in the house. Wait, not primary color and that's their color. I don't paint my whole house like my base colors, nice like white gray called frothy surf. But I have a lot of like my fireplace, an accent wall, that kind of thing. And they've been these really great dark blues and dark greens for a while. So they're going back to bright.
Nell has the most amazing maximalist beautiful house. Like her decorations should be in magazines. Can I just say?
Not yet, but thank you.
Well, especially because it's so very clearly you. It's like it's professional and zhuzhy at the same time. Like, I don't know, I love it.
It is very me. One of these days I'm going to dive into purple. I've never really done a whole lot. I think I may have had like a very pale purple bedroom in high school. I don't remember.
Yeah, it has so much potential.
Right?
Like purples and oranges together was always just felt like Halloween candy, nothing else. But I mean, like the painting right behind you. It's actually, it does amazing things when you layer them together.
Right? Well, that's a project for 2 years from now when I decide to repaint again.
Mm-hmm. Well, the story that I want to tell you today is honestly one of my very favorite things. When I was a kid, one of my absolute, we were all Disney kids, at our age group. When you got that puffy white
oversized
VHS case under the tree, it was just like the best thing ever.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot harder to get to some Disney movies back then because we didn't have Disney Plus. Disney would sell them in like bursts. So you could, when they'd open the vault, you could like run out and buy the special edition.
When I was a kid, the Disney Channel was this mythical thing that just occasionally appeared because they would do those teaser weekends.
I remember.
and all of a sudden, one network channel would turn into the Disney Channel, and you'd want to be glued to the TV the whole time, and none of the adults in the situation really got how rare this was because they were damn sure not paying for cable. So go outside, read a book.
Right.
Which, honestly, I was mostly fine with. But, you show a kid cable and then take it away. That's a different proposition.
Right. Back in the olden days when streaming platforms kind of first started, I remember thinking it was like so smart to do that because you never had to pay for cable. Everyone I knew's cable bill was like at least $200.
Oh, yeah. That was highway robbery days. Now they're just clinging on for dear life.
They are, but right now, if I added up all the streaming services I'm subscribed to, it's way more than cable.
It's cable.
I am glad, though, that we're past the days of when if you missed a new TV show, you could watch it on that TV show's website, abc.com or whatever. It was always so slow and busted and so full of commercials.
It was just borderline worth it.
Yeah, that's why one of my bills is so big, because I'm like, I'll just have access to all of that commercial free, please.
We have a weird collection of Amazon buy it because we just want to know where it is, damn it.
Yeah.
It's like the core collection of like things I fall asleep to, things we watch when we're sad.
I only have 2 in mine, and both of them are Spider-Man. The first into the multiverse, and then the second one. They better give me the third one soon.
I pray they will never pull digital rights management on me and pull them back because it's like the last solidity that I feel like I have for those media. I still have DVDs. I don't care. I took a DVD player on my last overnight trip last week and was happy as pie. I had my little battery backup and everything, and I didn't have to worry about the Wi-Fi password or whether I was encroaching on somebody else's anything. It was just my little tiny compartmented space, and I still appreciate that.
I do have DVDs also, but I don't have a DVD player.
Yeah. It's a recent acquisition. We got it for camping last year.
Nice. Hey, is my copy of Shanghai Nights still over here?
Maybe.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's not like I'm watching it because I don't have a DVD player. I was just wondering. That's my favorite movie of all time.
It's pretty good.
So funny. Funniest movie ever. Okay.
So the reason we got onto the media talk was Disney movies. They felt like, very particular magic when we were kids. And so one of my super favorite movies was Robin Hood, the Disney version.
Oh, yeah.
I was also obsessed with medieval everything. I was just like, this is all the things that are magic rolled into one, had the songs memorized.
Yes. Yes. My cousin knew every single word to the Little Mermaid movie, and we spent our summers here because I didn't grow up here the whole time. And my cousin had it on VHS, and that was what we would watch like 2 or 3 times in a row. Mm-hmm. But she would recite the whole movie, every piece of it.
I think I have to stop myself from doing that now a little bit when we like the really, really ingrained ones, saying the line right before the actor does. Don't be that person. They're not popular people. I acknowledge that lack in myself. And all of the characters in that are amazing independently, but I think the funniest one in the whole movie is Prince John.
He is funny. Funny at his own expense.
At his own expense. If you haven't seen it in a while, he is the classic bumbling villain. Everybody is against him, and all he wants is just absolute power, and why won't anybody cooperate? And I need my right-hand man. Which, side note, this is a total conjecture about Sir Hiss.
Okay.
I think he represents William Marshall. We'll come back to that, but just remember the name William Marshall. It's out there, but I think it might be true. So the whole time he's whining that their mother always liked Richard best and sucking his thumb, and he's a funny character just all on his own. It's a great movie.
Especially because the crown doesn't fit him.
Because the crown doesn't fit him, and that is
so symbolic.
It's such a dig in the eye, but there's so many of those that you don't really realize as a kid, and so watching it as an adult, all of the jokes about his mother and his brother are seated in a story that is so batshit soap opera amazing that it's like the exemplar of what I always say that bothers me the most about pop culture history media is that you're changing a story that couldn't possibly have happened any more entertainingly.
Yeah,
the actuality. Thank you. The actuality is so good. You made extra work for yourself. Stop doing that. Real people's stories are amazing.
Agree.
And this exact story is why. The reason that John is a ridiculous character starts with the fact that his parents were such monoliths of people. They were so influential in their own time and influential on the times that came after them.
Okay.
He didn't have a huge shot in the first place. So his mother was Eleanor of Aquitaine, who we will definitely do an entire episode on at a later time. She's one of my heroes. She started out as the heir to Aquitaine, which we've talked about before. It's like considered the best part of France in the 12th century. It has great agriculture, great culture in general. I was telling my partner about the episode earlier. I was like, basically, this is where all the wine, the poetry, and the sex comes from.
Yep.
Everybody wants to go to Aquitaine. And so she's raised in the court of her grandfather, William IX, who is the original troubadour. Several poetic styles are attributed to him specifically. He's got a huge body of work.
Okay.
The courts of love and chivalry as a concept got their seeds here.
Okay.
And it's just the flower of medieval knighthood. So she's raised in what the fantasy of medieval looks like in most of our heads.
Okay.
So she marries Louis VII of France before he becomes Louis VII. So his father was Louis the Fat.
No. Okay.
You never get to pick your own nickname as a king. That's proof. I was looking for something else in that Dan Jones book earlier today and came across just in the index, like Vladislav the First, otherwise known as the Elbow High. And I was like,
Elbow High.
I need to know the story behind that name, but I'm not looking for that right now. I have to come back to that.
Yeah.
So she marries him, he's the heir presumptive, but it's the same kind of deal as Henry VIII, where he was the second son, and then his older brother died, and then they got the second kid out of the priesthood and said, you're going to be king now, and he's wholly unprepared for it.
Yeah.
And then immediately after they get married, Louis the Fat dies.
Ooh.
And Paris is not amazing at this point, particularly compared to Poitiers, which is the capital of Aquitaine.
Okay.
It's still a truly medieval city. It doesn't have infrastructure like proper sewer drainage, things like that. It's just not the same type of luxury that she was used to. So she ends up getting this reputation of being like this profligate, like overspender lady. And maybe she was, but to be honest, putting myself in her shoes, I really feel like I would have done the same thing. Like, oh, you think I spend too much on reasonable things that I'm asking you for because this place is a shithole and I'd like it to be less shitty?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you think I spent too much money before? I'll show you spending too much money. Like, you can see how that could completely happen.
Yeah, yeah.
She actually went on crusade with Louis VII.
Wow.
Yep. Went all the way to at least Antioch. That's also an amazing story that we'll wrap into her episode. But the coolest part for me was that she actually had armor made for herself and her ladies that was like
so
Greek
smart
goddess. Like it was like fashion armor. So they're riding across all of Europe in fashion armor.
Imagine
looking Xena.
Just how uncomfortable that really is.
I know. This is pre-leaf sprung carriages. This is still all leather, or you're on a horse.
Yeah.
And litters seem like they would be so comfortable. Like, oh, people are carrying me on what is a giant couch. But just imagine laying on a door, maybe got some pillows, maybe not, and then asking two people to walk with you between them. Like all the jostling and the turning, and one guy scratches his nose and then you're in a ditch.
Yeah,
that's not comfortable.
No.
So she's an amazing person. Louis clearly isn't, and she manages to extricate herself from the marriage, which is just damn near impossible. The case that gets her the divorce is consanguinity. That ends up being the excuse for most royal divorces, which means that you were too closely related when you were married, and they shouldn't have let you get married because you were that closely related.
Oh.
So consanguinity is the most fluid rule ever.
Yeah.
It gets used or not, basically, at the Pope's discretion.
Okay.
And they were vaguely related because all nobility is
right.
pretty related. And so the exception that they were granted for consanguinity when they were married was not valid, therefore they were never married. And she used that "we don't have any sons" example.
Okay.
Because she only had 2 daughters.
Okay.
So she gets out and immediately marries Henry II.
Which one was he?
He is also, it's also prior to his accession to the English throne, but he is Henry II of England.
Okay.
So at this point in time, Matilda, who we've talked about before, she's the granddaughter of William the Conqueror.
Okay.
Mostly styled as Empress Matilda because she was married to a German emperor when she was very young. And then he died and she came back to England.
Oh, okay.
But she was always Empress because you keep that title even though it's like Dowager, I guess. She was her father's heir. Yet another firstborn son dying problem. This is why people have a lot of kids.
Yeah.
But it was the disaster of the White Ship, where her oldest brother and pretty much all the young party people of the royal family were out on like a pleasure cruise going from Calais back to England and ran aground and everybody drowned.
Oh my goodness.
And so like the cream of that generation is gone, and so now everybody's left with Matilda as the heir. Well, mostly people don't deal well with lady in charge. Shocker.
Right.
Wish that had changed.
Boo.
She actually gets stopped on her way to her coronation. No ladies here. And so her cousin Stephen of Blois. Wow.
Blois.
I'm going to admit right now I don't know how to pronounce it. It's Blois.
Blois.
It's French, so you're not supposed to pronounce all of the letters. You're supposed to just elide together. So Stephen of Blois.
Yeah.
He's like a cousin that technically has a claim, and so a bunch of people throw their hat to him as king because he's the next closest male relative, and screw having a lady in charge. There's other factors, but that's the major impetus, was they didn't believe that a woman could rule effectively. So the end of the civil war between Stephen and Matilda is when Eleanor is getting rid of her way too pious priest husband in France and becoming an available single lady again who happens to own most of France.
Yeah.
So Matilda, she's a politician. She has to be, because she can't win her throne by force like any of her brothers could have.
No.
Eventually, she has to come to terms with the fact that she can't beat Stephen. And so she allows Stephen to rule on the agreement that her son will rule after him. That he has no hereditary rights. He can only have it for his lifetime.
Okay.
She has since married Geoffrey Plantagenet. This is the birth of the Plantagenet line.
Okay.
So that was named after the fact that this dapper dude used to put a purple flower in his hat called the Plantagenista.
Okay.
And everybody thought he was hot, and hundreds of years of dynasty were named after this guy's favorite hat decoration.
Sweet.
Yeah, so he's a prospect, but he doesn't really have a whole lot to his name. And so the idea of his son marrying Eleanor of Aquitaine, it's an ambitious move, but Matilda gets it done. She gets it negotiated. It's like, this doesn't look like a great marriage now. Mm-hmm. He's going to rule England, and this can be a dynasty from, the phrase was, from the Orkneys to the Pyrenees.
Okay.
Because the Pyrenees mountain range is between Spain and France, so that's extreme southern France, and then the Orkneys are the northernmost islands.
Okay.
In the British.
Okay.
So you could build an empire from the Orkneys to the Pyrenees. And so she marries him, and this has to have killed Louis, has son after son after son after son after son. God has clearly smiled on your enemies, you douche. I mean, it's not all sunshine and roses. Henry has a temper. It's what gets him into most of his trouble. The biggest trouble that he has in his whole reign, this is fast forwarding a little bit, but is his probable ordering of the murder of Thomas Becket, otherwise known as St. Thomas of Becket, sainted because of this incident. He was close confidant, advisor, chancellor to Henry II for a lot of his reign, and so when the Archbishopric of Canterbury comes up, Henry puts Thomas Becket in, like, hey, this is my guy, he's going to get my stuff done. Another third of the government's under my wing. And Thomas grows his spine and goes, nope, I'm a church member now, and you can't tell me what to do, God does.
Oh.
There's a lot of back and forth there, and after one particularly irksome incident, Henry cries out, will no one rid me of this troublesome priest? And a bunch of his knights that are sitting around the table like, wow, we really want stuff from this guy. We want him to like us and not kill us. We're going to go kill this guy because he said so.
Yep.
So it was something he paid penance for his whole life. I think that he didn't actually intend to order the murder. It's hotly contested. Because you can't really... That's an emotion-based thing. It's not going to be documented. You're just always going to have opinions about it.
That's true. Wouldn't stand up in court.
No, exactly. So, because of that incident, and many others beside, Eleanor of Aquitaine actually leads a rebellion against him. So, all of the sons that at this point have grown up, it's a weird problem to have as a medieval king, to have too many sons that are too healthy and too good at politics. You can't win.
Shocking.
You actually can't win. This is Henry VIII's wet dream, and it's Henry II's wet pants.
Yeah. Yeah.
So their oldest son, young Henry, he's chomping at the bit to run anything. He's been raised as a king and he's ready. And so Henry II gives him a full coronation, makes him like a co-ruler as sort of, this is your training. You're going to have some responsibility. I'm going to not have some of these responsibilities and relax a little bit. You're going to learn how to do this reasonably and responsibly. Smart. Immediately, young Henry goes, oh, I am qualified for this. We don't need the old man.
Never mind.
He's not wrong to have wanted to overthrow Henry. Henry was also not wrong to want to have held on to it. Like, he wasn't doing a bad job. His reign was very successful in a lot of ways. But he had a bad habit of walking in, taking everything from everybody, and then saying, if you play by my rules, you can have it back.
What?
So he had a lot of enemies as well that were perfectly happy to go for his young son, who's like, hey, you can probably keep your stuff if I'm in charge.
Yeah.
And your wives. English Henrys, you can't keep them off of people. So they lead a rebellion and fail. And there's this epic movie moment where Eleanor is riding across the countryside dressed as a knight, trying to just escape the aftermath of having gotten caught. Young Henry dies.
Oh.
The first heir dies, and the second heir is not ready for it.
Dun, dun, dun. I'm going back to the good idea.
Mm-hmm. So Richard becomes the heir, and Eleanor goes to prison for 15 years, and Henry takes her out for courtly stuff every once in a while, but for the most part, her life sucks until Henry dies. But then, her very favorite son, Richard I, who is a mama's boy to the end, is now in charge. She's finally out, she's getting to do stuff, she's going on progresses, this is the retirement she's always wanted.
And Richard is son number 2.
Richard is son number 2. The thing about son number 2 is not that he was not raised to rule. It's not that he wasn't trained. But he was raised thinking, all right, I'm going to be in charge of poetry, wine, and sex land. You have England. And then all of this happens. And everyone's like, well, yeah, you still get, poetry, wine, and sex land. But now you're in charge of Always Rainy land where everybody kind of hates the family. You got to do both. I would run away to the Crusades, too.
That explains so much.
That's why it's always Prince John in the Robin Hood tales. So, and I'm not going to say that's the only reason he went on crusade, but yeah. And so John, in all of this, was the only son that stayed by Henry's side. He was also the only son that didn't have an understood inheritance. And so he got the nickname John Lackland.
Oh.
So when he's making that joke to Sir Hiss, mother always did like him best, it's actually really a true statement.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
We were talking about William Marshall earlier and how I think that it might be Sir Hiss. So William Marshall served, I think, 4 successive kings because he was a servant of Stephen. He was definitely high profile in Henry II's court. He carries over into Richard's time, and while Richard's out on crusade, technically John's not even in charge. But then Richard goes and gets himself captured in Germany, and they're demanding an outrageous ransom. And so Eleanor of Aquitaine, bless her heart, in her 60s, rides in those leather-sprung carriages back across Europe to ransom her favorite son and bring him back.
No.
So now Mummy is no longer making sure that dumbass isn't screwing up the country. Enter Robin Hood. So that's the time period.
Dude, how long did it take to ride a carriage to Germany?
I feel like it's at least several months. I'm not sure.
How do you get off the water?
So
how do you get off the island?
So if you're traveling to, say, Jerusalem from London, you're taking a boat down the Thames, you're getting to probably Calais. There's a bunch of ports. And you would be landing, if you're being most efficient in terms of space, you're landing more in like the Scandinavia area. People didn't do that for a reason. You're going to end up a white ship kind of situation. The less time you spend on the water, the better. Okay. Because the ships aren't the same level of seaworthy. People are not doing transatlantic crossings at this time unless you're a Viking.
Okay.
So you're most likely going down the very narrowest point, which is Dover to Calais.
Okay.
Yeah. At that point, you're overland.
Yep.
For the whole ride.
Dude.
So going by water just isn't even an option. There are ways to shorten the trip with some water crossings, but that's just land travel as fast as either your legs or the legs of the thing you're riding can carry you.
Wild.
I know.
Okay, so she was gone for a while.
She's gone for a long time. So then John's in charge. And he starts not just pulling his dad's old tricks, but lacking the finesse to deal with the aftermath.
Nice.
Eventually, Eleanor and Richard come back, and they put things together. And Richard isn't amazingly effective, and Eleanor really is.
But wait, what was John doing to mismanage it so much? Parties, treaties.
His worst screw up really happened after he got the throne. He's spending too much money on his lifestyle. He's seizing castles. He's razing castles. He's just creating general havoc. John is actually the one that ended up signing the Magna Carta.
Really?
Yeah, because he had mismanaged everything to the point where he had a full-flung rebellion on his hands, and the only way to put that rebellion down was to sign the Magna Carta, which severely limited, or at least attempted to severely limit royal power.
Wow.
It's not as ground-changing as you would hope.
Of course.
But it was new rule, and it was kind of only allowed because there was a slightly less badass character holding the keys, I guess. When Eleanor left, someone else was actually left in charge.
Someone that wasn't Prince John?
Yeah. A council of advisors were technically in charge, but they were really unpopular. And so John decided to set up an alternative court and start usurping these powers. Oh. And that's what they're talking about when it's, well, you're taking over your brother's rule, is nobody left you in charge.
Wow. Wait, did John outlived Richard?
Yes. So he did eventually become king, and that's when he signed the
have any
Magna
sons?
Carta. Richard did not. Because it was John's son that continued the line.
Okay.
Yes. Yeah. Richard comes back and dies without issue, and John succeeds him and ends up losing all of his mother's land. Through failed war after failed war after failed war. So that's the other meaning of John Lackland. All the wine, sex, and poetry country is gone, except for Anjou. He managed to hang on to Anjou, which was his father's holdings that he brought to the marriage.
Oh, imagine that being your legacy.
Right?
A cartoon makes fun of you. Mm-hmm. You lost all your mother's land.
Mm-hmm. And then your buddy, William Marshall, who served your father and your brother and is still just limping along trying to keep your ass in gear. Poor William Marshall. He had to have seen such a span of amazing events.
Right.
He's one of those people that if you could bring someone back from the dead to tell the whole story, he would be the guy.
Huh. Wow. It's so interesting just how the line passes down. Mm-hmm. I mean, honestly, if I thought about all the events that had happened in my family tree that allows me to be here today, pretty wild.
Yeah.
Nobody wrote those down though.
Nobody has to, really. Catherine Swynford, which is why I sent you that terrible video earlier today. I loved it. She was John of Gaunt's mistress that he then married after his wife died. So she was also Duchess of Lancaster. But she is the ancestress of every English king from Edward IV on.
Wait, so the mistress married after the wife died?
Mm-hmm. Huh. Yeah.
Well, there's precedent for Camilla.
That was what was bothering me, was because someone was saying, is Catherine Swynford or Camilla the most successful royal mistress? Well, first of all, that's a big question. But second of all, who the hell is comparing a 14th century progenitor of generations to I got to do Charlie? I'm sorry. I'm sure she has job duties, but it's not really comparable.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays it's not at all.
It's not.
And it's not like Camilla is going to have kids.
Right. But that's why it is so much funnier that Disney made really hard fun of Prince John. It's a really popular story. Robin Hood shows up so early in literary references. It's not quite contemporary, but it's within a century of being contemporary.
Nice.
And everyone from the 14th century on has been making fun of this guy.
Right, what a legacy.
What a legacy. Live a life where you are not a bitchy cartoon lion.
I love that life. No. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Thank you for listening.
Share us with your friends. See you next time.
Bye.
Bye.